I don't know if I'd really say that I'm a patient person, per se. Like, I think in general, in life, I'm pretty patient with other people, with circumstances, and with events happening to me. But when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks hockey team, there's a certain demon that takes over, I think, my mind as well as many other Canucks fans' minds when it comes to being patient with certain players. And for this one guy, I wanted to go out there and talk about, I feel like we as a fan base have been fairly patient with everything it is that he's provided on the ice, but now we have to have a conversation as to where we go from here. Because when it comes to Canucks forward Ilya Mikheyev, man oh man, we need to have a conversation about this guy. He is just one of those topics. Now, before we dive into that though, I also wanted to talk about the other Canucks news. We actually did have some stuff happen today with Vancouver. GM Patrick Allvin announced about 2 hours ago the following roster moves. One, you have Dakota Joshua, who was placed on the retroactive IR. Carson Soucy was placed on the retroactive long-term IR. And then you have Jett Woo, who was recalled from the Abbotsford Canucks in the AHL. And with these moves, we have ourselves 3 players that are going different places. Dakota Joshua now being on the regular IR. The initial assessment from Jeff Patterson was that he'd be week to week with a hand injury that he sustained during his fight with Mackenzie Entwistle against the Blackhawks a few days ago. Carson Soucy has been out for a while. Now he's on the LTIR, so he'll be out for an even longer amount of time. Let's see if the Vancouver Canucks can pull off some cap shenanigans LTIR business here. And then, of course, Jett Woo being in a position to get called up. This is great news for him because he'll be getting NHL salary again, he'll be working out with the main club, and he'll be practicing too. Whether or not you could say that he is the most appropriate guy to fill in those extra minutes, though, that remains to be seen. There are a few guys in Abbotsford that you could say are quote-unquote better players than Woo is at the moment. But these 3 stories are pretty noteworthy when it comes to the construction of the Vancouver Canucks, and one of the top replies goes out there and highlights how damning this really is. The Vancouver Canucks are 0-3 without Dakota Joshua. They really miss him and what that third line brings. You could also say that when it comes to the penalty kill, that is another area where Dakota Joshua shines a lot, and as we had seen in the previous games against Colorado and Minnesota, the Vancouver Canucks PK could use a little bit of work, especially from that Minnesota game. My goodness, the 5-on-3s were incredible to see just how often they were handed out. Not saying that Dakota Joshua could have prevented a bunch of 5-on-3 goals, but still, he is a penalty killing force. You could say the same thing about Carson Soucy, honestly. But another reply on this same Twitter thread is made by a username that actually caused me to laugh out really loud when I read it. It's from Mikheyev Hater. Go get Chris Tanev, he says, and that has a bunch of likes, etc., etc. And then even further down, you've got Austin and Langley, who posted a fake graphic. Welcome to Vancouver, Chris Tanev. So this idea here, not saying that Jett Woo is too bad of a defenseman that you gotta go out there and make a trade to replace him, but with Soucy out, with this roster spot opened up, with Jett Woo getting some reps in, it does open the door to a Vancouver Canucks conversation about really forcing a trade here. Chris Tanev has seemed to be a fan favorite, and for good reason, so if the Vancouver Canucks try to reopen those negotiations, we'll see. But as one of the replies went out there and said, the guy's username was Mikheyev Hater, and I wanted to have a bigger conversation about Mikheyev as well, because when it comes to his role on the Vancouver Canucks, supposedly as a top 6 forward to play with Kuzmenko and Pettersson, we saw that work out a little bit last year. I mean, he had 28 points in 46 games played, he was looking pretty alright. He was coming over from Toronto, he had just gotten paid $4.75 million a year till the end of 25-26, but this season, man, my goodness, has Ilya Mikheyev not been effective. Now, you could look at the points and say, wait a minute, the guy has 25 points in 54 games played. He's on pace for 36 points over the 78-game sample he's eligible for. That would be great, right? But then you realize that Mikheyev only has 2 points in his last 10 games and 1 point in his last 5, and from the way he's playing, you could very well see why that is. This guy just has no offensive brain whatsoever, and even in the defensive zone, you know, we tout Mikheyev as a two-way capable, responsible, defensively minded winger. Part of the reason the Colorado Avalanche won yesterday was because of a brutal Ilya Mikheyev turnover in his own zone when he had the puck with no pressure whatsoever and just sent it to an open Avalanche player. Like, I'm sorry, it's tough to go out there and defend a guy who's had this defensive reputation when he makes plays like that aren't defensively sound at all. And it bodes even further when you talk about what Mikheyev was able to do with Pettersson this season, which was pretty much nothing. The guy had a lot of goals and stuff early on in the year, but ever since Kuzmenko started to fall out and he himself was placed with PD with whomever else, like Pettersson, Mikheyev, and Lafferty, that was the time when Mikheyev was seen as the passenger on that line. When P.S. Suter was there too, Mikheyev looked like the passenger. I'd said this in a bunch of videos earlier on in the post-game reviews, but for Ilya Mikheyev, it seems like he gets a breakaway like once every 2 games or so. And that's a lot. That's a lot of freaking times to get a breakaway. You average 0.5 breakaways a game, but he never scores on them. Absolute Michael Grabner syndrome, hands of stone. He cannot dangle a goalie to save his life. He can't snipe one to save his life either. And a lot of the offense that flows through that Pettersson line when he was on it just would completely die down once Mikheyev got his stick on that puck. And there's a reason why, even yesterday, the Vancouver Canucks bring in Arshdeep Bains, a brand new AHL star who's a rookie at the NHL level, and they say, sorry Mikheyev, you're going down to the 4th line. We'll give your spot to Arshdeep Bains. And he did pretty well. Like, he set up Teddy Bluger for a chance, he had a really nice shot himself. Garland, Bains, and Bluger was a good, effective line. But for Ilya Mikheyev, he got placed on the 4th line, and that's where we were like, oh, we're starting to see this happen now with Ilya. That's very, very interesting. And to his credit, he did have like a few good shifts where he pounced onto the puck as he does, and he sped right into the zone like he does, and he maybe tried to dangle around a guy, which he doesn't really do too often with much consistency whatsoever, but he still didn't get any points. And for Ilya Mikheyev, heading into the next few weeks here, I'm going to be very interested to see what the Canucks are thinking about doing in regards to his position in the lineup and whether or not they'd be interested in trading this guy away. They got the Kuzmenko trade done. That was dead weight on the team. Ilya Mikheyev, you could very well debate, is part of that same group. It's just, for Ilya, he doesn't have a 39-goal season and 70-point year from last year to back him up. There's no super extended amount of hype for Mikheyev like there was for Kuzmenko, which you could say is why Kuzmenko was even eligible to get traded in the first place. Mikheyev has 2 points in his last 10 games. Like, even going back to the start of January. Let's go out there and look at statmuse.com and read this. How many points has Ilya Mikheyev scored since January 1st, 2024? Here's the answer. Ilya Mikheyev has 5 assists and a plus-minus of -8 in 22 games since January 1st, 2024. He's got 5 points in his last 22 games? Are you kidding me, Ilya? What's the point production on that? Let's do 5 divided by 22 and multiply that out by 82. That's a full season's point production pace of about 19 points on the year. This guy's making 4.75 mil. If you subtract the 5 points in 22 games that he had in the past 2 months worth of play, then okay, Ilya Mikheyev in the first, 32 games of the year had 20 points. Mikheyev went from 20 points in 32 games to 5 points in 22 games, and the night and day difference is very apparent here. Even if you just do Ilya Mikheyev's 2023 portion of the 23-24 season and you mark that down, what is that, 20 points in 32 games played multiplied out by 82, that's a 50-point pace. This guy went from a 50-point pace player to a 19-point pace player. What the hell happened here? Where has his offense gone? This guy was playing with Pettersson for the majority of that time. He only got 5 points in 22 games. What happened? There's a reason he's on the 4th line now. And when it comes to a team like this, where they're building so much on current momentum and current trends, they nip whatever pieces are in the bud that are not helping them win. They nipped Andrei Kuzmenko. They grabbed onto Elias Lindholm. This team is trying to go all in. They're pushing those chips. You cannot go out there and justify a $4.75 million cap hit being applied to somebody like Ilya Mikheyev. So let's see if there actually is some sort of a trade to be done here. Could the Canucks find a way to get that done? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire Ilya Mikheyev conversation, as well as all the other stuff we had talked about too. Do you think the Canucks either A, find a way to trade Mikheyev away, or B, do they actually revive him? Like, do they give him the opportunity to showcase that he does still have that 50-point pace potential within his game? because the past 2 months or so, we've seen none of that, and it's been very frustrating to watch as a Vancouver Canucks fan. So on Mikheyev, on Jett Woo, on Soucy, and Dakota Joshua, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.